He promised help was on the way as Iranian protesters face the brutal price of their dissent. The number of those killed by the regime is difficult to verify, but it's believed to be in the thousands. And yet, Donald Trump is holding his fire for now.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
For their part, American allies in the region, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, are encouraging President Trump not to intervene militarily. Meanwhile, here's what the Iranian foreign minister told Fox News yesterday.
For 10 days, it was peaceful, legal demonstrations and protests for economic shortcomings. But after that 10 days, for 3 days, we had completely different story. A terrorist operation, when terrorist elements led from outside, entered these, protests, they wanted to increase the number of deaths. Why? Because President Trump has said that if there are killings, he would intervene. And they wanted to drag him into this conflict. And that was exactly an Israeli plot.
So that's the position of the regime. So has this uprising been crushed, and what comes next? First, we get the perspective of a fierce defender. Mohamed Marandi is a professor at Tehran University. He's been on this program regularly. He was once an advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiating team, and he joins us by selective internet access at Iran's press TV station in Tehran. Mr. Marandi, welcome to the program. So let me ask you something. You heard what President Trump said, that he's heard that there are no more killings and that there will be no executions. So that is what Foreign Minister Arakchi told Fox News yesterday. Do you think that he told, Trump and the administration via Fox or otherwise that in order to head off military intervention?
No, he was telling the truth. And I believe your framing is completely inaccurate. And Iran is not a regime. You do not call Saudi Arabia or the Emirates, which are family states.
Anyway, do you know what, Mr. Marandi?
You don't call them regime.
My show, I will use the terminology. I'm just trying to ask you some questions. I understand your position. Have the protests been crushed?
No, that's another framing that you're using. There were no protests that were crushed. On the first 2 days after the currency dropped, and it was American manipulation in neighboring countries that brought down the currency, 30 to 40%. And we had protests on the streets, and I know you know this, and there were no arrests, and no one was harassed. Not like in the UK, where people who hold placards against genocide are arrested, or in Germany, where they wear keffiyehs in sympathy to the Palestinians and they're battered on the streets. There were no arrests. Then afterwards, 2-3 days later, there was infiltration by rioters, and many of them held guns and knives, and there's footage of this. If anyone looks at my Twitter feed, it's full of these people. They attacked police stations. They killed police officers in police stations. They murdered 100 police officers and a bit over 300 officers of the law, including volunteers. Yesterday, we had a mass funeral in Tehran for 100 of them. But the narrative in the West is somehow that these are peaceful protests. The Israeli regime put out a Persian tweet, and you know Persian, put out a Persian tweet or a statement saying that our people are on the ground. The Mossad said that. Pompeo, who was the head of the CIA, said Mossad's on the ground. Channel 14 of Israel said 2 days ago, and it's a tweet. They said that weapons were brought in from a foreign government. Guess who it is? And that's why hundreds of officers in Iran were murdered. The Israelis are saying this, but somehow Western media is all ignoring it because it's disrupting this fake narrative that these were just peaceful protesters.
Mr. Marandi, you have already said that there was, and so did the foreign minister, many days, I think he said 10 days of peaceful protest. We have reported what you've said. Indeed, we have. We also have footage, as you've seen, that's come in when there's chinks in the internet blackout. Footage from, let's say, Abadan in Khuzestan province, which shows Iranian forces firing on protesters. I do have to say that CNN couldn't verify the exact date, but the video took place in the last few days or last week. As you mentioned, there have been funerals for 100 security forces at least, but also we've seen body bags of actual protesters being gathered in various morgues and people coming to pick them up, families of protesters. So are you denying that your own forces, in their crackdown, have killed any protesters?
My forces?
The Republic's forces.
What you are doing is negating the truth. Many of those corpses were police officers. Many of those corpses were people murdered by these people. A woman in a clinic, they burned down a clinic, and a young nurse inside burned to death because of them. 2 young men in a mosque, they were surrounded, and they kept throwing Molotov cocktails inside until they died. They shot a 3-year-old girl. They shot so many people, and they were shooting the police from the crowds. There's a lot of footage of this, and you can see it because I posted some of them online, and so have many other people.
We've seen some of that.
But this doesn't fit with the Western narrative.
It's not about fitting with the narrative. I need to ask you whether you admit, after all the bloodshed, all the testimony that we've had from people who've left Iran, all the doctors' testimony, which I'll play in a moment, do you admit that many protesters were killed?
No, don't say admit, Christiane. I'm truthful, and the CNN is not truthful.
Oh, don't say that
CNN is the side that supported the genocide in Gaza.
Oh, don't say that now.
Don't frame it like that.
Don't say that now.
CNN
I'm going to ask you
genocide.
Please do not say that.
Don't frame the question that way.
Okay, let me tell you then. Okay, so tell me, do you agree? Go ahead.
The rioters and the police were shooting at each other. And people, innocent people in the middle, were also hit. And some of those people who were hit in the middle and murdered and killed, they were killed in the crossfire, and some of them were killed intentionally by the rioters. I spoke to a physician who I know, who operated on a few people. He said most of the injuries that he dealt with were shot with pistols from very close by. And he was saying that they were probably from within the crowd itself. And why did they want to do this? It's exactly as the Iranian foreign minister said. Who needs this war? The Israeli regime. This whole process of the currency manipulation, and then the riots, and then suddenly you have this consensus in the United States and the West to help the Iranian people. If you want to help the Iranian people, end the sanctions. Stop strangling people in Iran and Cuba and Venezuela and elsewhere. If you want to help the Iranian people, don't help the Israelis bomb the country and bomb Gaza and bomb Iran.
Let me ask you this.
That's how you help the Iranian people.
Let me play to you a doctor from an emergency hospital about that night, January the 8th. And as you have said, and as your foreign minister have said, between January the 8th and 10th or 11th, there was a lot of violence on the streets. This is what the doctor says.
Everything fell apart. At 8 p.m, the internet was cut. At 8:20, I got a call from the hospital. Doctor, come, you must come. When I arrived, I saw what we call a mass casualty situation. Every single one of the 4 operating rooms was full. I was there from 10 or 11 p.m. until the morning. I don't know how many surgeries I did, maybe 10 or 11.
And as you know, doctors and other health officials have said that there was, real stress on the health services. And even state television reported that, they reported that several thousand people had been killed in this entire and injured in this entire demonstration. Well, it was said, and we reported it.
The Iranians have never said that several thousand people were killed. Reuters, they just make things up. They have not announced the numbers yet. They probably will soon. But as I said, most of the people killed were either from the police or officers of the law or volunteers, for people who were killed in the crossfire. But Christian, one final point that I want to make to you, and that is that the United States and those in the West, their narrative on Iran is clear as day. It is to antagonize the country and to carry out a policy that the Israeli regime wants.
Okay, let me just...
And if there is war, have no doubt that oil and gas supplies in West Asia will come to an end. And that will change the lives of people across the world. And those people who carried out the war and those who support it, people in their countries will go and seek after them.
Let me drill back down to what started these protests, which was, in the words of all your leadership, legitimate protests against economic shortcomings and the collapsing currency. Now, you've just blamed Israel and the United States for that, but your President Pezeshkian, said when this all happened, don't go after the USA or blame anyone. It is we who must properly manage our problems. It is we who must find a way to solve problems. This is what he said at the beginning of these protests, and he fired the head of the central bank. The supreme leader also said that he understood and accepted that there were problems with the economy. He threatened rioters, but he said, so why do you say the outside world conspired to collapse the currency when your own leaders are saying that they have to do a better job to reach and meet people's needs?
No, Christian.
What do you mean, no,
not
Christian? I'm quoting you. I'm quoting you.
Well, listen to my answer. It's not that. You're not the outside world. The West is not the outside world. The West is a minority, and the rest of the world is disgusted with what the West has done in Gaza. So it's not the outside world. But when it comes to Iran and Iranian leaders saying that we have to fix things in the country, of course they do. They have a responsibility. But the president has repeatedly said that the United States is waging war on us. You're taking one part of what he says and erasing another part, or one part of what the leader says and erasing another part. There's no doubt that the United States and its allies have been strangling the Iranian people, ordinary people, for decades now. There's no doubt about that.
All right, let me ask you.
And the Iranian government is struggling to overcome. And that is why Iran is moving and joining BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and other organizations, because the West is waging economic warfare and the Iranians are looking for solutions. The country has many problems. But this did not begin with the protests.
Okay,
it began with the currency manipulation.
Okay, you say that. Your president says something else. I'm not misquoting him. But what I want to, let me ask you a question, because this is one of the big problems, and that is the internet blackout. Clearly, people like yourself, the leadership, they're busy posting. They can talk when they want. Foreign Minister Arakchi did a 30-minute interview with American television yesterday. It was a very good line. We cannot see what's going on, and the Iranian people can't get their information out. So I wonder why that is. And I also wonder why, or whether you think, because there have been several uprisings over the last 20, 25 years, and each one of them has been put down. And I wonder whether you ever wonder whether whether the Republic can actually keep existing on the back of these crackdowns. Has it lost its legitimacy?
No, Christian, there's no crackdown. The Iranian people are actually among the most politically aware in the world, because there's a Persian media empire in the West that's antagonizing Iran day and night, 24 hours a day, which you know very well. Billions of dollars are spent on it a year. In Iran, on Monday, you forgot to mention that millions of people came to the streets in Tehran and millions of others in other cities in protest against the rioters and against the terrorists and in support of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Why did up to 3 million people come to the streets in Tehran? Why? It was live coverage. It was rolling coverage on multiple channels. Al Jazeera English was there. RT was there.
We showed
CPN was there. Turkish media.
Yeah.
So
we showed it. We didn't do hours of live coverage, but we definitely showed
all
it.
Is that ocean of people, are they ignorant about what goes on in Iran, or they know the reality is different from the narrative produced in the West? Why, by the way, did they shut down the media? It's very obvious. Because these were not spontaneous riots. As soon as they shut down the media, when the violence was very high, it began to swiftly die down because these people were coordinating with intelligence services abroad. And when they lost communication, the whole thing went out. And on Saturday evening, there was almost nothing. And since then, it's been quiet. But there's also a second reason.
All right. Okay, I've got to move on now.
Because of the threat of a U.S. strike, the Iranians want to make sure that the Americans at this moment have, as the Trump regime, have as little information as possible about Iran's military.
Okay.
So the country is, for the most part, offline. And I don't have.
All right, Mr. Morandi, I get it.
As you know,
I know you're a press TV. I know. But there is internet. I know. But for those who are allowed to speak out, there is internet. Anyway, you've made your point. I appreciate it. I'm going to move on now. Thanks for joining us from Tehran, Professor Marandi.